Araki-san, you're there?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Welcome.
Should I show my face also, or?
Very happy to see your face. Yeah.
Can you see? Can you see me?
Yes, yes. All set. So we have another 1 minute to go.
Okay, sure.
How is the weather at home? And
Yes.
weather good?
Weather's nice. Yes.
So I think a lot of excitement building up for the coming Olympics.
Yeah, I think the Japanese government is willing to, no matter what, they'll do the Olympics.
I heard that the local population is allowed in the state.
They have decided to put up maximum 10,000 spectators, or 50, less than 50% of the capacity, whichever is smaller. You know?
So very good. So very difficult time for everyone, including the.
Yes. But they've lifted because of the Olympics, they've lifted the state of emergency, you know, and moved to. But then again, the number of COVID infection is increasing after opening up. So I'm not really sure what's going, you know, what government will do. I mean, although majority, I would say more than 95% of the people are wearing masks wherever they go outside, you know, but still, you know, if you sit in the restaurants, you have to take off your masks, and, you know, eating and drinking, and, you know, if you take too much of alcohol, then people start to get loose, right? So we'll see. But the number of infection is still very, very small, you know, compared to India, and the vaccination drive is, you know, really escalating right now in Japan.
Great. I think it is time to start.
So should I?
I will introduce formally, and then you can start your.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to those of you who are here. Good evening to those who are from outside. And as I see a significant number of registration. Welcome to the MIJSC at IISB Tatsujin Speech Webinar Lecture Series. My name is Saidi Pratna. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at MIJSC focuses on strengthening the relationship of bond between India and Japan by promoting academic, industry, and societal linkages. This webinar series is one such attempt wherein we are bringing in experts from both the countries to talk to us about the societal, technological, business, and many other facets of life, which highlights both the Indian and the Japanese perspective. This webinar is actually the seventh in the series. We started last August, in the middle of the pandemic, especially pandemic. And I have great pleasure to welcome to this webinar Hidehito Jay Araki. He is a renowned consultant for over 35 companies, Indian and Japanese. And he has had an extensive and in-depth exposure to the business landscape. I will try and give you a quick intro to Araki-san. Though the list of his achievements and accolades, I will try to keep it brief so that he can get on with his talk or our discussion. Araki-san is, of course, Japanese by nationality, but by heart, he is half Indian and half Indian, I say because roughly about half of his working life is in India. Therefore, he has gained a deep understanding of the business landscape, as well as, of course, the cultural and other landscape. One interesting thing I have noted whenever I have interacted with this, that India being so multi-cultural, very diverse, he does not take one aspect or one view and paint the whole India. He says people from so and so place where he has interacted and so on. So that I think is a very interesting way of putting it, and I think the correct way, considering that though there is some Indian characteristics, but we are very, very different across. He's also got transnational consulting expertise and experience, where he has worked with companies and many other companies in Japan, China, also. He has worked with Government of India and Government of Japan, training, skill building, immersion learning, promotion of tradition, and also in business expansion. In one of his recent roles, he has worked with the Assam government in India for technical internship training program, as well as he is a platform coordinator for JETRO, which helps SMEs. So his role there is the overseas expansion platform, SMEs overseas expansion platform. Given his vast leadership experience, global we believe that Araki-san is probably the best person to speak about this topic. And the topic is unlocking the secret of transnational business structure. And he will share with us his exclusive insight on the corporate landscape in India. So before we proceed, format will be that So there will be more like an interaction between the two. And at the end of that interaction, he has agreed to answer any questions that the audience so please do put your questions in Q&A part of the chat and we'll relate it to some of the. So Araki-san, a very warm welcome on this platform. And the first part which is very important, very interesting, is that India and Japan are very unique countries, different from, not just different from each other, which of course is very different. As you said, even to look at, we are very different from each other. But we are also, as countries, we are very different from the rest of the world in terms of market, operating style, history, cultural background, and so on. So, may I request to warm us up? May I request you to give us, from your perspective, a bird's eye view of what makes India and Japan so different? And yes, they are a good fit. So, could you take it on, Araki-san?
Thank you very much, Saidip-san, and very warm introduction and kind introduction of myself. And hello, everyone who's participating in India, and good evening to everyone who's participating from Japan. I'm basically working in India, but today I'm participating in this webinar from Japan as I had some business to do, so I came back to Japan early June. And as you know, the COVID situation is not as settled in Japan also. And especially when I'm coming from a country like India, they are very strict about the quarantine. And since I was from India, I had to be detained 10 days in very, very small hotel room, and finally I got released after 14 days, and now I'm very free to do whatever I like to do and eat my favorite Japanese cuisines in Tokyo also. Anyway, I don't want to waste your time, so let me start my brief presentation about how I explain Indian market to many Japanese corporate and Japanese companies who are willing to enter this market. Okay. Can I share? Okay. Can you see this? Okay.
Yes.
So let me just briefly explain the difference between two countries first. Okay, this is like a bird's eye view of comparison between two countries. India obviously is a large country, about 9 times as big as Japan. But this you may not notice, but Japan is like almost 70% forest. That means very few land available, even the size is very small. So naturally the population will be condensed in some part of area, especially like Tokyo, whereas the land is abundant in this country. And population wise, India is about 10 times as big as Japan. And the big difference between two countries, India is still very young country, whereas the average age is about 27 years old, I believe. where Japan is very, very old country and the young generation is not really increasing as they expected. And the average age is Japan lives a little bit longer than the average Indian people. And GDP, India is really catching up very fast. I think currently Japan is third in the world and India is about sixth in the world. So India is really, really catching up. And that is one of the reasons why Japanese companies should put more attention to this market. As Saidip-san has explained, India is very diversified and complex market. And the official language itself has like 22 languages, so many languages printed on the rupee bills. Whereas Japan is only one language, although there are a few dialects, but basically we only speak Japanese, right? That's a big difference between two countries. And I'm just showing you this COVID infection. See, from Indian perspective, the number in Japan is very small, but Japan has been going on under emergency state, and India, on the other side, has been strict lockdowns, by the states, initially by the national, and now, the lockdown has been controlled by the states government. But Japan, the government does not have the authority to do a lockdown. So all they can do is to say, stay home, please stay home. And because of the characteristics of a Japanese, many Japanese do stay home, although there's no penalty, even when you step out. That's probably a bit different from Indian country, whereas you have to force some people to stay home. And as far as the vaccination is concerned, the India's vaccination drive is going on very fast right now, and the number is increasing day by day. Whereas the Japanese finally started to do a vaccination drive, and currently about 3.7 crore vaccination has been completed. And whereas India is about 30 crore. So if you just compare the population is like 1 to 10. So I think on the vaccination drive, we're almost equal on the speed. And this is very interesting. This shows, see, there's probably less than 30 authentic Japanese restaurants available in India, whereas in Japan, there's like 2,000 plus Indian restaurants. So the balance is not there. So I'm hoping that more Japanese come to this market and start up more Japanese restaurants so that the Indian people can try, the authentic. I mean authentic. There are Indian Japanese restaurants also, but those are not authentic. So I would like you to try. If you want to try Japanese food, I want you to go to an authentic Japanese restaurant. And if you ask me, I can tell you the name of the restaurants. Okay. So these are the basic comparison between two countries, right? Now, the perception of India on the left-hand side, these are, if you ask Japanese, what does Indian people look like? And these are the people they think. So it's very weird, although sheikhs are very minor in India, but many Japanese thinks every man wear a turban, when you hear India. So that is the perception. And as far as the ladies concerned, they only see Bollywood movies occasionally. So when they hear Indian people, then they will think of a like North Indian lady, like this picture. But in Japan is like a homogeneous country, so everybody looks like the same. There's not much difference where either you go to north, south, east, or west. But reality is like this, right? Which Japanese people are not very much aware of. And as the middle pictures are more like a South Indian people, and the bottom picture who look like Japanese are coming from northeast side of India, where majority of Japanese are not even aware of that there are Indian people who look like us, who look like Chinese or similar to Mongoloid. So that's a big difference. India is very diversified, complex country, whereas Japan is homogeneous. So, uniqueness is not there in a way. So you meet one Japanese like you meet every Japanese. And this is a simple, comparison between the major city metro. The left-hand side is obviously, the Delhi metro diagram. And the right-hand side, even though the area is much smaller, how condensed the metro is. That means every like 1,000 meters, there's a station, in Japan, at least 500 to 1,000 meters. That means you don't need the last mile like rickshaws, to move around. If you take these subways, you can move anywhere in Tokyo without much of a difficulty. And all the trains and subway comes on time, sharp. Like if it's on a timetable says this train is coming to this station at 5:55, it'll come at 5:55 without no exception. So that is like a preciseness of Japan, which is very different from the existing metro system in India. So, if you have a chance, please go to Japan and try this metro system, which is amazing, I think. Okay. And now I will move on to the some facts when I explain to the Japanese corporate and company why you should come to India, right? Obviously, the market is really expanding, and the market size of the Indian is almost equal to Japan already, and it's still going on. It'll still increase every year, right? And because of Modi-san's digital drive since he's taking over the politics, the digitalization, where we call it DX, digital transformation has been increasing in India, and that has been helped to penetrate into the entire market of India. And the e-commerce sales is really booming in India. That is also another opportunity for many Japanese B2C players, right? Whereas many DX India is way ahead of Japan, as a matter of fact. I don't have much time to explain this today, but that is the fact. In many areas, India's digitalization is much, much way ahead of Japan. Which probably not easy for you to think. And the market is still there to grow, right? If you see the durable penetration, all these TVs, fridges, washing machines, if you go to Japan, the penetration will be like 90% or above. So there's not much room for the market to grow anymore in Japan. But in India, as you can see, even the TV penetration is about half of the market, right? And when it comes to washing machines, fridges, there's a long way to go. It is very unfortunate that not many Japanese players are left to play in this market, whereas all the Korean players and Chinese players are here to penetrate into this consumer durable market, which is a bit sad for a Japanese, But there is definitely a market to grow. So that is the reason why India. And like I said, the digitalization of this market is really growing very fast. And it's really opening up the market, including e-commerce, right? the internet users in India is almost half of the population, and where smartphone users is much bigger than Japan. You know, the bottom number is the current internet user in Japan, and the current smartphone users in Japan, and obviously SNS is, you know, the biggest market, biggest Facebook market in the world, and biggest WhatsApp market. You know, WhatsApp is not so popular in Japan. You know, there is another SNS application called Line. I would say 80–90% of the Japanese use Line instead of WhatsApp. So when you go to Japan, I would recommend you to install a SNS application called Line, Line, and communicate with the Japanese friends or Japanese colleagues or the business associates, right? Okay, definitely in Asia, you know, there are so many Japanese companies who are willing to go outside Japan, and China being the biggest destination for many Japanese companies. But as you can see, the labor cost is really increasing today. And if you compare it with India, you know, the India labor fee is less than half of China. So definitely there's an opportunity for Indian market to grow, you know, if the Japanese manufacturing company wants to come to this market. So these are the figures. I also show it to the Japanese. Why go to China? You know, why go to other Asian countries? Why not come to India? So this is also another reason. And equally, you know, the land cost is much cheaper, right? And the utility cost is cheaper. And also, as you know, many Indian state government is wanted to grow, you know, direct investment for overseas. So they do offer a lot of incentives to even lower the utility bills and even lower the taxes that they have to pay. You know? So these are some of the figures that I show it to the Japanese companies, why you should come to India. Also, India is a big country which has a Japanese specific industrial township. You know, the most popular one today is the one in Rajasthan called Nimrana, where like 50+ Japanese companies has manufacturing facilities. You know, it's like outskirt of Gurgaon. You know, about 2-hour drive from Gurgaon, and the interstate highway has been much improved now. So, you know, the distance is not really a barrier anymore. And other than Nimrana, the current hot city is called Sri City in AP. You know, because of the land cost. See, initially the Chennai was another big hub for many Japanese manufacturing companies, but because the land cost, you know, AP set up the township called Sri City, and the land cost is about half. So many Japanese companies, but the traveling from Sri City to Chennai is not so far. So it's still like a commuting distance for many Japanese. So many Japanese are starting to shift from Sri City, from Chennai to Sri City. So that is one trend you can see today. And these are the actual numbers of Japanese companies. You know, as you can see, although it is increasing, but it's not increasing as they should. You know, when I first came to India, which was like 2005, there was about 250+ Japanese companies available at that point of time. Today, we have about 1,400+ Japanese companies and 5,000+ offices across India. But compare the number to country like China, it's much less, you know, although the market side is equivalent to China. So, and there's also another reason why Japanese companies should come to India. And also the Modi government is pushing the manufacturing domain, this 50% is like objective of the not the current number, but the objective of the Modi government, BJP government. And these are the some figures of Japanese companies who's doing business in India, and the biggest is obviously Haryana because of Maruti Suzuki factory, Honda motorcycle factories. You know, there's a lot of tier one players who has factories in Haryana, and also now number of company are starting to shift or set up factories in Gujarat. And like I said, you know, Surrey City is becoming hot. So these green ones are the areas where Japanese companies are still increasing, right? For your reference. And I just show you some of these successful Japanese companies, which is very, very few today. Obviously, Maruti Suzuki is more successful Japanese company, you know, who started business with the Indian government. And now the sales of Suzuki in global India weighs more than half, you know, and without India, Suzuki cannot even survive. And now they're starting to shift outside India to export the manufactured products from India to countries like Middle East, African countries. And still they take 50% plus market share, which is incredible for any Japanese company in any other market. You know, all the other Asian countries, Toyota has much, much bigger market share, but India is very unique in a way. That means the market is very different from other part of Asia. And obviously, Honda motorcycle is another good example where they started the business with Hero Group as a Hero Honda, and they expanded the market and they learned how to do business in India. They started to set up a network system, starting to sell scooters, you know, Honda scooters, where Hero Honda will not be competitive. Then while selling the scooters, they set up a network, they studied the service network, and once they're ready that they can do by themselves, they departed with Hero. And today, two companies, Hero and Honda motorcycle, takes almost 60% of the two-wheel market, so this is like a win-win for Indian company as well as a Japanese company taking care of the major domain of the two-wheeler market. So this is why I just show you as a good example. And this is another B2C company called Unicharm. They came to India quite late. They came to India in 2007, but because they had very unique product offering where the pants type diapers were not available in India when they came to India. So they decided to focus on the pants type diapers when they enter this market. So when you are offering the unique products where India people are not aware of or never used before, then there's a still good chance of getting the market share. And even after coming late in the market. And this is a good example of one of the Japanese company. Although they took about 10 years to become who they are today, when you're investing in India, you cannot have a short tail kind of investment strategy. You have to have at least 10 years to cultivate the market and make a fruitful business. But still, this is a very good example of a successful company from Japan, right? And because of that, some of the B2C company which is now entering this market, Muji came to India first, then Uniqlo followed up. Although the bit different of the product offering, but I believe Uniqlo is doing very good business today, and they came to India 2 years ago, but they already have 6 stores, and they are planning to start a lot more stores, and all the stores are doing quite good business, because of their quality and because of the price setting in India, So I believe Uniqlo will be very, very successful in 5-10 years in India, and I have no doubt. And the right-hand side this is very unique way. I don't know whether they're going to be successful or not, but I'm just showing you because India is known as a curry country in Japan. And this Koko Ichiban is a Japanese curry chain stores, restaurants, which they came to India and they wanted to challenge the origin of this Japanese curry. So I'm hoping that Indian people will perceive it as a different type of a cuisine, not just compare with dal makhani or butter chicken, but hoping that they would accept the Japanese style of curry rice, which is a bit different from the typical. If you have a chance, they only have as of today, they don't have one in Bangalore. So if you want to try it, you have to come to Gurgaon, Cyber City, to try it. But if you have a chance to come to Delhi NCR, please stop by and try out the Japanese curry. It's a very unique offering, Okay, so like I said, the market size is almost equivalent to China, but this is the reality. 15K plus Japanese company are doing business in China today, right? Whereas only 1,400 plus. So it's like 1 to 10, and there's no reason why they should not come to this market. And that's why people like me or people like Saidip-san have to work harder to bring more Japanese and bring more Indian people to join hands with the Japanese manufacturing companies, because there's a lot of a mutual benefit that we can share, So this is India today. So we have to go a lot more, we have to move a lot bigger, right? And this is another example. India is not very popular country. This is a technical internship training program. Japan has signed MOU with various countries in Asia. And although India has signed MOU in 2017, as you can see in this chart, very, very few number of students are going to Japan, which I'm also working on, to promote the Indian students to Japan. So not just the business, but also the perception of India is still not there in many of the Japanese people. So India would also need to promote their countries and their potential more aggressively to many Japanese companies, through channels like MIJSC or other domain, and hopefully this number will increase in the future because demand is definitely there. So many Indian students can go to Japan and they can earn money also. Typically in this TITP program, all they need is to learn basic Japanese language, and the certificate is not really required other than the caretaking job. So if you have a basic Japanese and all you need is 12 pass, which I'm sure most of you don't even need to go to college to take on this training program. And because of the minimum wage law in Japan, at least you earn like 70,000-80,000 rupees per month, which many of the top pass or even the ITI grads cannot ever earn if you stay in India, right? So this is a good opportunity for many Indian students. Go to Japan, learn the technology, learn the cultural differences, and come back to India. And once they stay in Japan 2-3 years and come back to India, then their credibility will be much higher, right? And these are the people which all these Japanese companies doing business in India would like to hire, right? So this is another project I would also need to promote, so that the rank 12s India can become like rank 5, 4, 3, 2, you know, because Vietnam is sending 2 lakh people every year. 2 lakh, that's a huge number, right? But the population of India is much bigger. So, you know, we really need to work hard on to take on these challenges also. Okay, so why, the last but not least, why Japanese people hesitate to deal with Indian people is one is distance, you know, and another one is a wrong perception of the country, because not much information is provided to majority of Japanese. So if you go, you know, walk on the street and ask any Japanese, and if you hear India, what do you think? Then first thing they say turban. Second thing they may say cow. And third thing they may say lots of cows. You know, those are the typical perception of India, which is very different from today, you know. So we have to communicate in proper way to tell them, oh, you know, there are obviously a lot of cows and a lot of turbans, but the other side of India has to be promoted in proper manner. So that is very important. And Japanese people feel more comfortable when they're surrounded by like a Chinese cultural people, like many of ASEAN countries, where Chinese are taking control of many things, you know, including the food. You know, food is very similar to Japanese food. So the diet is also very important, you know, for Japanese. And that is keeping the distance from India. And obviously the cultural difference is there. You know, culturally, many ASEAN countries, including China, are very similar to Japan. But when it comes to India, it's much more westernized in many ways. And Japanese people get sometimes intimidated, you know, that. And also, if you go to ASEAN countries or China, at least on the front side, they show you some kind of respect. Oh, you're from Japan, you know. They show, although they may not think inside their heart, but they at least they show that's respect. I'm respecting you because you're Japanese. But when you come to India, Japanese, whether you come from Japan or China or Korea, everyone is the same. They don't really show extra respect for Japanese. So that's something that the Japanese are not used to when they first come to India. You know? So that is something is blocking them mentally also to come to India. And obviously the language barrier is there. You know? If you go to ASEAN country or China, there is always someone who try to speak the Japanese language to communicate. But when you come to India, English is the common language. And if you don't speak English, you won't be treated as a human being. You know, that kind of a thing is there in this country. And the English ability of the Japanese is very weak. You know, don't think me as a typical Japanese. You know? And obviously the available food, you know, authentic Japanese or Chinese food is not much of it unless you're in big city like Delhi or Mumbai. You know, if you just step out in countryside, you will not have opportunity to have these Japanese and Chinese. So these are the things, not all, but some of the highlighted things that I think which is blocking Japanese to come to this market. Lastly, although we are very different, India and Japan, but there's a lot of complementation that can happen between two countries. Obviously, we both are democratic country, right? So political system is not much of a difference, and Buddhism is like a subsect of Hindu. So the way people respect elderly, the people take good care of the family. Family is very important. This kind of a concept is very similar. And India, obviously, IT and software is very strong, right? Whereas Japan is weak, and vice versa. They're technically very much advanced, and they're very strong in device and hardware. So if these two stuck together, it'll be very strong partnership, right? And the India is very strong in sales and marketing, and that is the most weak point for Japanese. That's why even the durables, electronic products, because their marketing and sales are very weak, Koreans and Chinese are taking over the world. Only because of that, not because of the technology. So where the Indian people can help Japanese to sell their products or technology as a partner, right? And India obviously is very young, and Japan is very old, and the population is decreasing every year, right? So Japan will definitely need many support in various sectors, where India can help Japan to survive in 10 years, 20 years to come, right? And the India is obviously very high interest, and Japan is very low interest. So if you have a good partner with Japan, you can borrow money in Japan and invest it in India, which is then you can earn a lot of returns. So that is like a simple mathematics, right? So this is complementing each other. And Japan has lots of funds, and India needs these funds to develop the country and develop technology. And Japan is high value currency, and India is very, very low value currency. So when Japanese companies enter into India, their Japanese yen will be very strong to invest in this market. So there are a lot of complementations between two countries, which I try to persuade to many Japanese entities and corporates to come. Don't go to Vietnam, don't go to Myanmar, but come to India. So these are the things that I strongly feel it's important. And lastly, this is called Itsutsu no A in Japanese. Aseranai, awatenai, ate ni shinai, akiramenai, anadonai. These are the 5 learnings that the Japanese expats been passing on for so many years when you're doing business. And what these means in English is 5 N's. Never hurry, never panic, never depend on, never give up, and last but not least, never underestimate the Indian people or the Indian culture. So these are the things that the Japanese expats has been passing on when you're doing business in India, or if you're dealing with the Indian people. These are the things you should keep it in your mind. So that's about it for my first part of presentation about India and Japan, mostly about India, how to sell India to Japanese.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
You started by sharing what you think was the pluses of Indian market, both in terms of size, in terms of labor, and so all the hard aspects also you started with. Then you talked about the fact that if one can have a unique product, you can penetrate even a very old market like diapers. So a very old market in India, but
Ye-
good product, unique product, then you can probably step in. Third point, which you said that there are a lot of opportunities both in India, explored by the Japanese, and also there are potentially many opportunities for Indians in Japan. It has
Yes,
not been explored or exploited. And that was a key point that you made, especially on the technical manpower side. Then you mentioned about the complementarity in terms of many aspects, the dynamics that you talked about, financial aspects, stage, but also the cultural aspect, and so the language aspect is one. Culture, religion, all these things become positive if we work together. And of course, you ended it in your typical fashion, 5 N's.
Mhm.
Be never panic, never depend on, never give up, and finally, never underestimate. I think
Yes,
I
yes.
see you. Right. What I would like also to take you to the next point, which of course you have given a both a 100 feet overview of the whole scenario, but also you have given some examples lower down. Could you share with us what, because you did mention about quality and if you must have good quality, then benefit. So can you elaborate, giving some examples
Mm.
of different outlook of Japanese and Indian about quality and process control? What does it mean? And also to a Japanese, what does it mean to us in India? And amongst all that, what could become a priority for the Indians if they want to do business with Japanese? Because this aspect has been bothering many people that we think we have a high quality, but when you go there, you see that the quality that they have in mind is very different.
Yes, yes, yes.
So if you could give us some examples and also share with us as to how that gap or perception gap could be.
See, I think basically Japanese have wherever you are in the organization, even you're on the top or you're at the very bottom of the organization or the work, everyone has pride of their profession, right? And accumulating all these pride is making big difference in quality that they output. Hello.
If you can hear.
Yeah, so I think it's just the multiplication of the each individual's responsibility, right? That's making big difference. Even on decision-making process, India is, many Indian companies like a family-owned type of a company, and the big boss decides everything, right? Whereas in Japan, even a big corporate, it's always bottoms up. So, that's making the quality consistency, right? And because they take pride on whatever they do or whichever the role they take on the organization, that So we don't really need to force people to keep the quality consistent, because everybody takes a pride on their role, right? That is like something that you'll be taught from kindergarten to elementary, primary, in junior high, and all these. It probably connects to like ethics also, and that's making a big difference between two countries, right? So when you're dealing with the Japanese, and if you want to become a good partner, then I think your mindset has to be a little bit tweeted towards the Japanese way of thinking. And for instance, if you have a meeting in Delhi, 5 minutes late is nothing, right? Even 1 hour delay is also nothing. But in Japan, everything is punctual, and everybody expect to be punctual. So if they say we'll meet at 1 p.m., they don't mean 1:05 or 12:55. They mean 1, to be exact. So these are the mindset that you're dealing with. I think globally, this type of a precisionness or the punctuality is very similar. German people's quite similar, I think, characteristic wise. But when you're dealing with the Japanese, this is most important thing, So let's say if you are meeting first time with your potential client or your potential partner, don't be late. It's always better to be 30 minutes earlier to arrive than 1 minute delay. So that can sometimes jeopardize the entire relationship. So you have to take it. The punctuality is very important, and if you delay by a few minutes, that means you're not respecting the other partner. That's how they will perceive, right? Oh, you don't care about me. That's why you're late. And obviously, many Indian people give a lot of excuses. Oh, because unexpected traffic was there, blah 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 blah. But that is not accepted. If you can expect that, you should start early. That's kind of the concept, right? And they don't also, when you're dealing with the Japanese, see, Indian people tends to do a good presentation, but they're not really a good listener. So try to listen to the other party, and that is also very important when you start into do business in Japan. And obviously, language is very, very important when you're dealing with a Japanese company, right? Good example is I represent many Indian companies. They hire me as advisor, they hire me as a director. Because if the Japanese, the other side of the Japanese company sees this Indian company has some Japanese sitting in their organization, they feel much more comfortable, not just because of the language, but also since a Japanese is, sitting on the other side of the table, they feel comfortable and they feel closer. And so that's why the language takes. And as I told you, many Japanese don't speak English. Even the ones who come to India to become a country manager, many of them don't even speak proper English. So it's very difficult for them to do business in India to begin with. But sometimes they have no choice, but to send someone to sit in India. So then for this person, it'll become hell, because they cannot speak English and they cannot communicate with the Indian staff, and so he sits in his dungeon and there's a big communication gap happening, and eventually the company will not perform well. So I've seen so many Japanese companies doing this mistake by sending non-appropriate country manager to India. It's a sad thing between two countries. So did I answer to your questions, or sorry. I cannot hear you.
I was. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
So the many Europeans also have an issue that you did in your opening remarks. You talked about effective Japanese companies in India.
Mm.
Is there anything that you can think of, because Indian companies in Japan, what type of success they have had, and from that, what is it that they can learn and do for the other companies who also want to do business in Japan?
You know, obviously, there's not many Indian company who's been successful in Japan. The only I can think of a good the only successful companies are IT related company where, like I said, digitally Japan is behind if you compare with the global standard, and India is advanced in IT sectors. So when Infosys came to Japan or Tata Consultancy came to Japan, their know-how and technology that they can offer to Japan are like most advanced thing, which is very valuable to them. So that is, and obviously, if you compare to the company from US, the costing would be much more attractive to many Japanese companies. So that was why. So when you have something to offer where the Japanese have a lot of demand and the supply is not there, so those are the things that Indian company may have an opportunity to do business in Japan. But like this is what I also suggest to many Japanese companies, that when they come to India, they tends to send like a Japanese management to do business in India, but which is mostly not effective. So most of the Japanese company who are successful in this company they let the Indian people do the sales and marketing, right? And the Japanese concentrate on the technology or the quality control where they're strong at. Vice versa, when you want to do business in Japan, you should hire a good Japanese to run the company, because India is very unique market in the world, with my experience. But at the same time, Japan is also very unique. You don't see any other market like Japan, So in order to understand the psyche of a Japanese customers, you need Japanese support, So first thing you should do is to find someone who understand what Indian companies intended to do in the market, and who can guide them to do the right or set up a right strategy to enter this Japanese market. And most of the American companies, the European companies who are successful in Japan, the top management is not American or the British. They let the Japanese run the business. So if you want to do good business in Japan, I would recommend you to find a good Japanese candidate who can devote to your company to make the business grow, like many American or European company do. Because company like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, all these are B2C companies, or even P&G, or Unilever. All the top management is Japanese. So especially when you're dealing with the B2C segment products, I would strongly recommend to hire Japanese, and you can just concentrate on whatever you're exporting to Japan. And so that's the advice I would definitely give you if you want to do good business in Japan. You all you need. I mean, it's the same thing. If you want to do good business in India, you have to find a good Indian partner, right? So if you want to do business in Japan, you just need to find the right Japanese partner and become a very close friend. So that is very important to do. But obviously, it would help you if you learn Japanese. Fortunately, I could get by with English in this country. That I didn't really need to learn much of a Hindi on a business scenes. Unless you want to bargain on the street with the, but on the business scenes, everybody speaks English, and but most, like I said, most Japanese don't speak English. You cannot expect them to understand English, even though they pretend that they understand English, and they may nod like this, yes, 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 yes. But you'd expect they would probably understand like 30% of what you wanted to say. So if you want to do good communication, you should. So in that sense, if you have a good Japanese partner, who understands your intention or objectives of business in Japan, then they can speak on behalf. So that's something I would strongly recommend. Because doing everything by Indian in Japan would be too difficult of a task to do.
So you made one very interesting point during the opening remarks that doing business in India is you have to have a long-term investment.
Yes.
I think, would you say it is very similar to what Indian companies would expect to do in Japan?
I would think so, yes. Because Japan is as unique as India. So, what many mistakes that the Japanese expats do, or the Japanese company do, is they keep changing the country manager every 3 years to do business in India. But after 3 years, you only learn things to be done in India. Only after 3 years you would skim the Indian market. You start to understand the Indian people's psyche, and how to do business in India, or how to deal with Indian companies. Then they'll send back. Then they'll send a fresh MD from Japan and start from scratch. So they make a big mistake by doing that. They don't accumulate the know-how. They just keep resetting the know-how every 3 years, which will never work in this country, right? Similarly, in Japan, you cannot send Indian people to stay in Japan for 1-2 years and come back and to have some sort of a successful story, but which is almost impossible, right? So you need to have a long-term commitment. If you were to send someone to represent your company from India, you have to make sure that he stays in Japan for at least 5 years, at least. Ideally 10 years. Right? Although I've been in India for the past 16 years, I still haven't understood the entire market. And there's so many things I need to learn in this Indian market. So similarly, if you are serious about Japan, but first thing I would recommend you to go is to visit and see it yourself, how different it is and how different people are, right? Then you come back to India, start making strategy, or hire someone like me who understands both.
think that is what you mentioned, that you have to have a Japanese face and Japanese culture person who can then be the face of the business.
Who understand the intention, who understand the strategy, and who understand the strengths of the Indian company, which is very, very important, so that you can sell your company to Japan. Right?
Araki-san, there are many questions from the audience. We will take some of the questions here, if you say. One question, which is very interesting question, which I will start with, is what is one aspect that you would think India and Japan should swap with each other?
One is, sorry, what?
What India should take from Japan and what Japan should take from India? What is that one thing that you think?
India should take from Japan. What I believe India should take from Japan is, one is technology, right? And one is quality control. Those are the two important aspects which Japan can still offer, right? And what Japanese company or Japan should take from India is a strong sales capability and strong marketing capability. You know, although I did not mention so much about potential of Indian market, you know, India can become like a hub to penetrate into Middle East and Africa. As you know, from India to West, you know, the Indian network is very, very strong. Whereas in ASEAN market, Chinese network is very strong. So I would recommend many Japanese companies to use this Indian people's sales and marketing capability to sell their technology and quality of product. So as a partner, it's a beautiful match between two countries, you know, because that's where Japan is lacking. You know, they have a good technology, they have a good quality control, but there's nobody who can sell these products to the world. So India can become a very strong partner to sell this USP of Japanese products or the services. So that can be complemented each other. And whenever Japanese company come to India, they should find a good Indian partner who can be a true partner and do a joint venture. I would definitely recommend, instead of having 100% subsidiary in India, I would strongly recommend to find a good Indian partner and, you know, complement each other with unique strengths of the both countries. Yes.
It is one, thank you. I think that is a very significant advice that you have given. There is one slightly divergent question, but very interesting question, is because you presented that forestation depth in Japan and India. So the question is Araki-san's thought on exploration, on engagement in sustainable forestry, which has been pioneered in Japan, with natural agricultural materials available in the east of India. Do you have any thoughts on that? How we can learn?
Actually, as far as the forestry is concerned, you know, as you see, like at the beginning of presentation, 70% of Japan is forest. But in order to keep forest in good health, they have to cut the trees, right? But these trees has to go somewhere or to be used. But in Japan, there's already not enough demands to take all these wood. So rather than importing the Northeast forestry products to Japan, you know, if India can take this, you know, one of the technology Japanese government is also strongly recommending is CLT technology, which is like a cross-laminated timber, because timber is hugely available in Japan. And because they have to cut the trees and to do something with the wood, the demand is not there in Japan. So the Japanese government is strongly recommending to export this wood by using some technology to build, the high story buildings, not just the wooden houses, but the high story buildings. And this CLT technology is I think it's invented somewhere in Europe or US, but utilizing this forest of Japan, Japanese. So that's something that the Japanese wood can be utilized somehow in India. That would be great. And since India is not earthquake country, I think you can build quite high buildings entirely made by wood. And these wood are treated like a fire, I think, fire against, against fires also, obviously, but maybe they have to study about termites of India, which is very strong. The termites of India can eat everything. So these are something that they probably need to study. But so to answer your questions, rather than opportunity for Northeast, that they could probably utilize the abundant wood of Japan at quite reasonable prices.
So one more question.
Yes.
Question. This is about the JV in India.
Yes.
So, as per you or your observation, what is the extent of assimilation or absorption of the Japanese concept or culture or approach or system in their JV partners in India?
Sorry, yes, please repeat.
The Japanese have many JVs in India.
Yes.
So, what is the extent of absorption of the Japanese concept or Japanese approach JV partners in terms of their philosophy, their work ethic, their style?
When it comes to manufacturing, many JV companies do incorporate to how to control the quality or the keep, and they incorporate Japanese system to work on in India and educate the Indian workers to follow the system. And typically, they would have like a small school session of these know-hows of Japanese manufacturing, systemized. And they try to incorporate as much as possible. And they even use the Japanese words within the factory, terms like kaizen, and also in Japan, typically even in the big corporates, the management sits together with the low grade employees. They don't sit in a small room like Indian management do. They sit together. Even the Maruti Suzuki still do the same. Even the senior management sits within the same floor, and he doesn't have his private room, right? So the communication is very, very easy between the management and the employees. And also, you can have a bird's eye view of your employees working. Because if you sit in a room, you don't know what your employees are doing, right? It's not, unless you have like monitoring system with a camera or something, which is not viable. But if you sit together, then you know how they work. and how they, maintain the quality of work. So that is one system that the many JV companies are incorporating, which is working quite well. And surprisingly, many Indian employees are accepting those type of working style.
There is a, you are working with JETRO on the SME.
Yes.
So, though there are big companies like Suzuki making it present, what is your experience? Do you think there's a high potential of SMEs from Japan coming and doing business?
No, yes, yes. I've been doing this platform coordinator of JETRO for past 3 years, and this will be my fourth year running. And I've interacted with so many SMEs who has very unique technology, and I do see a very good potential, if they can partner with the good Indian partners to distribute their products or even to manufacture their products in India. But the biggest issue for them is because of the size of the company. It's typically you have to be SME to use this platform. Right? You cannot be multinational company to use JETRO platform. So typically the size of the company is very small, and even though they see a potential in the Indian market, they have nobody to send to India to become a country manager. So that is the biggest issue for these SMEs. Although they know that there's a market in India, they know that their technology will definitely work in this market, but they have nobody who can be assigned to this market to represent the company. So that is the biggest challenge for them. So we have to somehow make fill the gap, between these SMEs who's willing to enter the market, but there's nobody who can send. So what I typically recommend them is, if you cannot find the suitable person to be sent to India, you should outsource it. And who may have experience in India and who may be retired but have nothing to do. Because today, see, Japanese retirement age is 60 to 65. But as you know, 60 to 65 is still very young, right, in today's age. So there will be many people who are willing to work again, with their capability. And typically these aged people who have experience in India have a lot of know-hows and knows how to deal with Indian people. So that's what I would recommend. Try to find someone who's retired recently, who was, sitting in India for 6 years. Then that would be even though the industry may be different, but, the commodity can be changed. So, but doing business is something that you cannot learn quickly. So those are the things I recommend. If you cannot find the right person, try not to send anybody, because you won't have successful, returns. So if you cannot find the right person, try to outsource who's suitable to do business. Because staying in India, doing business in India is not so easy for many Japanese. So that's.
Do you think there is a reasonable degree of success of these companies so far?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of blue ocean in this country for lots of Japanese SMEs. So what could happen is the Indian SMEs who's willing to take on the technology or collaborate, they should also approach JETRO, and JETRO could be a gateway to Japanese SMEs who's willing to join hands with the Indian SMEs, because it'll be very difficult for Japanese SMEs to join hands with big corporates like Tata or Reliance, right? But mentally it'll be easier for them to join hands with SMEs of India who can be trustworthy. So that's something that I should really work on also. Try to find the right path.
This is a very good message for Indian
I
that
think yes, yes.
you
So I think
and
we need much more interaction between two countries. We have to provide opportunity, and MIJC should also try to invent some sort of a gateway between two SMEs, of Japan and SMEs of India, and
so that's a
I-
in fact what we are working on is some platform called Bet Index, where SMEs will get evaluated on that platform, and that business evaluation sheet is available for companies from Japan to see and then start the marriage, the partnership, and because then it is a more, how do you call it, transparent,
mm,
because that is one of the problems Japanese have, that how transparent is the Indian company. This framework allows such a, so we are in the process of finalizing this.
okay.
I will share that with you, then we can start discussion. There is one more question. If you are, this could be probably the last question because we are running out of time. There are many organizations like JUSC, the Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers. This use, in your experience, how far has it been helpful to strengthen the relationship between these two countries? Do you have any experience or exposure to this?
No, unfortunately, I didn't. I was not even aware of this organization. So, no,
So, the great thank you, Araki-san, for there is many some of them have asked the questions on the chat platform, but the overall people are very happy with the way you have approached the subject.
I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't waste too many people's time. And I hope I helped somewhat understand two countries in better ways. And
one of the questions is, can we get loan from that point you said from Japan to tie up with the Japanese companies in India because they have some business ideas. So how to take it forward? This is
the easiest way to bring money from Japan is to set up a JV or the company in India and use external commercial borrowings. Because in Japan, interest rate, if you put money in the bank, interest rate is like 0.1%, which is nothing, right? So, but if you use ECB, you are legally available to the interest back to Japan. So what I mean is, if you have so much money in Japan and no way of using it, you should invest it in India as a ECB, and you get the money back with the very handsome interest compared to what you can earn. If you put your cash in the Bank of Japan, you get nothing, right? But if you use ECB to send like 10 crore, 20 crore to India and bring the money back to Japan legally with the handsome interest, which is like 3%, 4%, which is never possible in Japan. So there is ways to use the Japanese fund to invest in this market. And if you grow your business in India, it's nothing like it. So there's many ways that you can really work together with the Japanese. You cannot just borrow money from a Japanese company, but there's a way, if you collaborate in proper way, that you can utilize the Japanese funds in better manner in this market. Yes.
So this is very useful. Yeah, people ask this question. And just for the information, what we had discussed, Araki-san,
Yes.
we will your contact details, your email, with the people who have participated.
Yes.
And Araki-san has very kindly agreed to share this number, and he will he will put you in touch with the JETRO and other organizations, which you have also asked for in your chat session. So we will be sharing the Mr. Araki-san details, and I'm sure that this session has been a very useful session for all the participants, and we are very happy that you took time and shared your thoughts on this very interesting topic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I really hope that all the participants enjoyed this session. And although I cannot see your faces, I would definitely like to meet you in the future. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, and namaste, because you are half Indian.
ありがとうございました。またお会いしましょう。See you again.
See you again.
Okay.